Hello, listeners. This is your joyful Jayasree, and you are listening to a brand new episode of our very special show, Don't Pause Your Life. We are extremely grateful to have Lina Mookerjee with us here again. And for our first-time listeners, I'd like to give a beautiful intro. She is a psychotherapist, counselor, expert on stress mental health, especially women and menopause. Hello, Lina.
Hello, Jayasree. Nice to meet you. Namaste to you and namaste to listeners all around the world.
Yes, absolutely. Namaste to you too. And I'm extremely happy talking to you today. And we have picked a beautiful topic, something that a lot of women are very rarely aware about. So we'd like to discuss about premature menopause.
So premature menopause is basically what it says. It's the experience of menopause before your natural process would have happened. And that can happen for all sorts of reasons. So you're no longer fertile. You're no longer able to have children. That's basically what it is. So your periods cease, and that can happen for all sorts of reasons. So it happened to me. If there is a medical issue, in the case of me, there was a tumor in my womb, and I had to have the womb out, which then I had to prepare for that process, and which took me into menopause. So that can be, there's there's organic matter that needs to be removed, and that affects literally your ovaries producing eggs and your ceasing of being fertile. It can also happen because of treatment. So for cancer treatment and other sorts of treatments where there is chemotherapy and radiotherapy can affect and induce premature menopause. And those are the reasons that basically prompt that to happen, because it is premature before your time. It isn't a natural ending. It's before your natural ending of periods and being fertile.
Got that. So let's consider the average age of having a menopause, so that people usually say it's 40.
Yeah.
40 plus.
Yeah.
So now we can confidently say that premature menopause is something that happens before 40.
Absolutely. Yes. And I've experienced clients who've gone into menopause at 21, 22 years old. Yeah, because if they've experienced any chemotherapy or radiotherapy or any disease or affect that required surgery, that's what's prompted the production. And it's really tough. It is really tough to come to terms with that and what the consequences are of that process, that premature natural process. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So true. And this calls for a lot of awareness, and the family is something that has to stand strong together is what I believe. True. So let's talk on that perspective also. Like, how can women be valued and supported while, they are grieving the losses that come with premature menopause?
That's a really good question, because as you say, as a woman in her own right is experiencing loss and the grieving, it's understanding. The key thing, Jayasree, is about spouses and family, parents, children, if they may not be around, you see, because there's all the consequences if you've not had children, then suddenly that expectation goes. And there's what I call a lot of holding and care without asking questions or doing something like they're ill. It's a recognition of a life stage that's come early. So it's respecting the fact that there's going to be up and down emotions, and being prepared to be supportive and not telling the person what they should be feeling or even criticizing, because we can lose patience. Hurry up now, you're down all the time. Come on. Well, it's a grieving process. So understanding, talk. The big thing is keep talking. Even if they don't want to talk, reassuring that we're here, we love you, we care for you, but not to smother either. And it's a balance. And also asking primarily, what do they need? What do they need? Do they need quiet? Do they need to talk? Do they need whatever? But they all know. The person suffering will know. But the key thing is this conversation. Talk about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely beautifully said. And the consequences of premature menopause, many a times, as you have just said, we may not have children, but that isn't the only scenario, right? You have a lot of mental fluctuations, you have a lot of hormonal flux happening in your body, and it's like a roller coaster altogether. So how can one actually hold themselves together in this process? We are talking about people to support, we're talking about everybody else around us, but how are you supposed to stay strong?
That's
something that you need to know.
Absolutely. That is such a good question. I am so glad you've asked it in that way, because at the end of the day, it's the individual who is going through that process. Number one, be aware. Number one, really take your reactions, your symptoms, your experience seriously. And as women, there is a generalization that we have to shut ourselves up and keep going and pretend. It's what we call minimize. We keep it all very low. No. Right. So really be aware. Begin to express. You're developing a new relationship with yourself. So journaling is a really good way, because it's about talking to yourself. And if it's the first time, it may feel a bit strange, but your body is going through a massive life change. It literally from the bones up. I remember when I went into my premature menopause, it felt like my bones were drying up. Literally, that's what's happening. Oh, it's painful. It literally is painful. And you think you're going mad. Okay, check out with others. What is this? Am I getting the perspective about people who you trust? But the key thing is, if we go back to practicalities of how do I hold myself? So as I said, start journaling, start reading about the subject. Diet's a really important one. So body's already under stress, because it is with and you said it beautifully. The hormonal flux causes a tremendous number of fluxes through our whole system. So body's trying to adjust, and it can take years. It's not just going to happen like that. So be prepared for the long haul. So diet, cut your sugar out. As I pull a face, it's in everything we eat. If we're not careful.
Yeah.
Your caffeine. If you drink alcohol, be careful, because these are all stresses and already a stress system. And if you smoke, definitely no. So it's been really careful. You can really positively improve your quality of health through your diet. Don't not drink loads of water, because we can dehydrate very quickly. And sleep is very important, and exercise. So it's about getting balance by being active. So we don't just sit there. It's really important we keep moving, because as we get into premature menopause, our bone density starts to reduce. So we have to keep moving, keep doing jobs, lifting, carrying, to maintain our strength, because it starts to reduce. And I know that, I'm now 54, and I know the difference where I was before, and your stamina changes. So it's all these things that can literally help you every day. But the key thing is how do you start to build a relationship with yourself? And that's what we call self-reflection. And for women, we have the machinery in the brain to do that very easily. And I talk a lot about this. If you want to plug into my website, that's another way. Get help, get resources, start reading the right books. And I can give you a list of resources to go to, Jayasree, of some beautiful writing. You may want to start writing poetry. You may want to start writing some stories. Your creativity may kick off. They're all supportive ways to help hold your process, because it's phenomenal. What can come from this, to me, from my experiences, huge amount of growth and beauty. It's beautiful if we can ride the storm. And that's what I definitely promote. But it's having faith as well. You will get through it, but it's how you choose to get through that. Do you want to get through it, run through it and avoid, or do you want to use it as your transformational process? And that's the difference.
Very beautifully said. I believe, a lot of our listeners are also able to connect to what you just said. Any situation of life, this kind of attitude is something which we need to have. And absolutely, that makes beautiful sense.
Brilliant. Because one thing you've just prompted me as you said that, one of the big emotions that comes up is anger. Because what are you noticing? Around you?
Definitely.
Really. Okay, because I can give you very quickly the medical explanation of what's going on, because I was researching this, and basically there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, which sits at the temples of the skull, basically. And what happens when our estrogen levels drop, which is what happens in menopause anyway, our amygdala becomes very, very sensitive. The estrogen's a beautiful hormone. It's like the buffer of life. Women can tolerate pain. We're designed to. And estrogen is part of that process that helps us deal with the injustices of life. Now, when that drops, your capacity to shut up, put up, goes. And so the fury starts to come up and all those injustices come up. And I do a lot of work around that, because every injustice is telling us something about how there's an online, there's something that's been done against us. We need to be observant to that. So rather than blaming everyone, it's like, right, what do I believe in? And that's the start of the empowerment process to me. It's very, very powerful. Like, who am I as a woman? Who am I as a person in the world? And that to me is when we can start connect with other women, which is what we're doing now, to start forming supportive groups and a supportive voice. You're not alone and you're not going mad.
Absolutely.
That's the key thing. Definitely not. But anger is very powerful, but it can also be destructive. So it's how we use that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, having said that, and having understood how important it is to take care of yourself, it's equally important to be vocal about this. I personally feel it's very, very important to be vocal, because your partner doesn't necessarily understand what's happening to you. Not everybody is educated about things like this. No. And not everybody is interested to research about topics like this. That's the basic, problem. Yes. And I feel, it's our responsibility as a woman to educate people around us and, to make sure that they understand what we are going through.
True.
So, that's amazingly beautiful journey, I feel. And any tips and tricks, for us to, be vocal and, try and keep our confidence up and make a way so that, people around us do understand what's going on with us. So do you have any tips to share?
Right. First of all, you've said it so eloquently. I'm going, yes. So we're having this conversation 5-10 minutes in, and already look what's happening. It's like we've cut through all the periphery and gone straight to the point of what is important. And the tips I would say from my experience, if I were to say every woman on the planet will go through this, you're not alone. And yet hardly any conversation has been had. So there are over 1 billion women going through this process simultaneously. So that's a lot of women, okay? So the tips are to recognize, to break the isolation. You are important. Your menopause in your youth is even more important in some ways, because you've got longer to go through that process, what I call the maturation process, where we grow up. Because where the focus changes from being the nice, fertile, pretty girl it changes. It does, because your body's changing. Right. How can we start to turn that into empowerment? So what women, tips and tricks, as you say, own it. Find your pride in that process. Be proud of the fact that this, if we look at the gods and the goddesses, it's Durga time, where we really hold the feminine power. And if we can start, and women naturally, in many ways, can be very empowered by other women. So seek out other women who are going through it and have gone through it. So someone like myself, where I write about this, and I will be writing more and listening more, where we start to tune in to like almost a sisterhood. And then through that, you have a resource bank of experiences where you can start to educate and inform. But it isn't done as trying to excuse yourself. No, it's like, right, I'm going to make a commitment every day to do one thing that supports my process, and make that commitment. And it's talking to other women that then you start to feel you've got strength and belief in yourself. And that's why we're doing this. Is it not, Jayasree, that we're doing this podcast? Because it's seen as important, but not to be ashamed, because shame comes into this as well. And that I want to name as being, needs to be recognized and to be dealt with.
Very, very much. And with science being so very much advanced, people are still living in a taboo world where, if a woman is unable to bear a child, and that becomes a real big taboo in today's world. And this is such a sensitive situation and such a sensitive topic to talk about. And in such cases, at least after you are, a 40 or so, people still get to understand. But when you are like younger and things like this hit you, they are really chaotic. And yes, I believe, it's very, very important, equally important that we all stand together as women.
Yes.
And, empower each other and make
Yes.
sure that we are not alone, as you said. But again, that's the challenge. You have your mom, you have your mother-in-laws, you have your sisters, or whoever, in the family, whoever are women, and they do not talk about it.
Yeah, no. And there's shame. It's because of shame. It's seen as there's something wrong with you. So we do the pointing of the person, and it's called scapegoating. And that's the term for it. I'm all right. You're the one who's got a problem. Don't come near. And it's so fascinating, Jayasree, that I've worked with hundreds of women, my own process as well, that you feel like you're pushed away so you don't contaminate anybody else. It's like you got a disease. You're rolling your eyes. It's like something wrong with you. I don't want to know. Keep away from me. And we do. The worst is when we do it indirectly. You don't get included in conversations. You don't get invited to parties or events, or people look at you differently and they don't include you. So there's exclusion by non-inclusion. And that is bad. And women, I will say, can do that quite cruelly.
Yeah.
And I'm naming it because, what we want is to empower and embrace as much as possible. Yet menopause can bring out the most nasty and cruel behavior where we start projecting another. I've got a point. Almost like a gun saying, you're the problem. And it's like, what? So if we can catch that, what we call gaslighting, and when we put someone down and turn it round and say, no, and that's where the support comes in, when you've got a body of women behind you. And, this could be another podcast of how do we work with power? Because that's what we're talking about. Because a woman coming into her menopause and beyond, if we look at the mythology and we think of Kali, because that's who she represents at this time, is about the crone, the wise woman. But that has been twisted to look like a hag. And it's not. There's a beauty in grey hair. I don't dye my hair anymore. But it shows that this is nature's process. And, we're going to go one day. And it's beautiful if we just stay with the natural process and not give in. No. It's how we acquire our faith and our right and our power to be who we are. It can go a long way, but we need help, because if you don't know, you don't know. And that's where my work comes in.
Beautifully said. And how do you, support women, how to support women whose preterm menopause challenges the societal norms? We've just addressed few, and, are huge expectations that are placed on women who will also be struggling through their physical and psychological change of, getting old or aging, because that's what it is considered physically, the change in your physical being.
Yes.
How do you support,
right.
from a stranger's point of view, I'm asking. It's not something
Yeah. Well, first of all, acknowledge what your feelings are. And if you're feeling undermined, if you feel frightened, if you feel rubbish, and ashamed, get in touch with that and talk to someone who you trust, who sees you and your beauty, not to make you feel better, but to say, you know what, I'm reminding you, yes, you're feeling vulnerable, because that's the word I'm going to use, where people are pointing fingers because they're nasty. The people are nasty because they think, why aren't you having, you're not a complete woman when you don't have a child. Am I right?
Yeah.
Where does that belief come from? Thousands of years ago, but even today. So the expectations on women to not only be the best in their career, they've also got to be the best in producing children. Bloody hell, what a set of expectations. So getting in touch with your feelings first, and then start to question those beliefs and turn it round. When people say, so bad, isn't it? You can't do this. Really, who's got the problem? Me or you? Give it back. And I would challenge. Yeah. Because otherwise it doesn't, we just carry it on. We carry the old, these beliefs are out of date, and yet they prevail. And until they're challenged and given back, because they're not, and that's where you have to get in touch with your own belief system and then be prepared to change that. But that's where what we call the inner life work comes in, to really look at yourself. Can you then stand confidently and say, it's not my problem, it's yours. So give it back. And that's a process. And we can talk about that further in another episode. It's fascinating.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really can't stop asking you questions around this, because, there are lots and lots going on in my head right now listening to you talk. A lot of women, we talk about, feminism, and we talk about a lot of stuff, women empowerment and everything. But what it truly means is something people don't, put an eye on. They don't really try to focus on the root of that word. Putting men down doesn't mean, you're a feminist. That's not the point. You should be able to pull yourself up no matter who you're against.
Exactly. And it's not about doing what was done to you, because it's militancy. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just two wrongs don't make a right. It doesn't work. But the key thing is being able to separate what's your issue and what's their issue. And literally, it's like saying, actually, you've got the problem, not me. So I'm going to give it back to you, but you do it graciously and no more. You don't get hooked in. Because being a feminist, to me, is about really honoring your feminine consciousness. We have a masculine consciousness. We don't. We're hermaphrodites. When we look at our brain and our system, it's just that we have more of one energy than the other, which predetermines our gender and our body parts. But what I'm saying is there's a real beauty in the feminine consciousness that isn't coming through, because it's all about war and faction and one over the other. No. And if we can get back into the beauty, and it's back to that word beauty, and I mean beauty, really, and there's such a power in nature. Go back to nature and watch her. She gives us the biggest answers if we just listen, slow down, and recognize the flourishing that can happen. But it takes time, and it takes patience, and a new way of seeing the world. And if you're prepared to do that, brilliant. There's lots of us doing it. But it doesn't mean about putting someone else down, because that does nothing. It doesn't solve it. We get trapped. And this isn't about trapping. It's wisdom. We want to acquire wisdom. But that takes courage. And that is there. We just got to develop it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Of course. And it's amazing, insightful information we've got from you today, Lina. Yeah. I really don't want to end the show, but yes, we do not have more time today. And that's exactly why I'm just, pausing my questions, and I'm going to shoot them at you in our next episode, definitely. And I am so glad I got to talk to you on such a beautiful concept, and trying to make our listeners also understand what this particular topic means. And thank you so much for, having us with your beautiful time. And thank you so much for your time again.
Do you know what, Jayasree? And thank you. You are an excellent interview, because I tell you why, as I said before, you come from the heart. It's because you know it's important and you value your listeners. And we have the medium here to open up lots of doors. And that is fantastic, because that's how we can educate. And that's
beautiful. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. And you take care. And thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much, Lina. And all right, guys, I believe all of you listeners have beautiful takeaways from our today's show. We will be back with another informative episode. And you're listening to TALRadio, powered by Touch Life Foundation. This is your joyful Jayasree signing off for today. Stay tuned and stay positive.